Chapter 3. Pat 1. This idiotic advice must be from Ashad, no one else can suggest such a thing. Doesn't he realize that I am still studying? Mama fumed at her sister-in-law. No, it wasn't Ashad or any of his family, it was Baba's idea, she replied with composure. Baba's idea? I can't believe it. When I got admission in the medical college, there was no such plan on the horizon. In fact, he used to tell Uncle Azam that I would not be married till the completion of my house job. What's overcome him now? And Mama was nonplussed. There must be some pressure, but Ammi told me that Baba wants it this way, her sister-in-law explained. Then tell them that I don't want to get married before I've done my house job. Fine, I'll convey your message, but it's best that you talk to Baba yourself, she advised. Her sister-in-law left the room, but Mama was very concerned. This news was so sudden and unexpected that she was jolted by it, not just figuratively but actually. She was hoping to complete her house job and then start her practice, that would make her financially independent and she could go ahead with her plan to marry Jalal, who would also have established himself by then. But this sudden business of her wedding, why had it come up now? Ashad's family have not made any requests, I have spoken to them myself, Hashim Yubin calmly explained. And Mama was in his room, she was insistent to know what was going on. You've already spoken to them, without even asking me, Baba? How could you do that? And Mama couldn't believe it. Her father looked at her seriously. If you remember, Mama, this marriage proposal had been accepted with your consent, he said. An engagement is something else, and marriage is different. You had agreed that there would be no wedding before the house job, she reminded him. Why do you have an objection to the wedding? Don't you like Ashad? It's not a question of liking or disliking him. I do not want to get married in the middle of my studies. You know very well that I want to be an eye specialist. If I get married now, then my plans, my dreams will never materialize. Many girls continue with their education after getting married. We have examples in the family. He tried to pacify her, but she interrupted. Those girls must be very smart, very intelligent, I'm not. I can do just one thing at a time. I've spoken to Azam Bai and they are coming over to finalize the dates. Hashim Yubin's tone was firm. You are wasting all my efforts, she protested. If this is what you wanted, then you shouldn't have made any promises. Things were different then, the situation is different now. She interrupted him again. Why? What has changed now that you should treat me so? I assure you that Ashad will cooperate fully in letting you complete your education, he will not stop you in any way, Hashim tried to reassure her. Baba, it's not Ashad's cooperation but yours that I need, she pleaded. Please let me complete my studies. Mama, stop being obstinate, I am going to do what I have decided, he said firmly, ignoring her pleas. You've been engaged for 4 years, and that's a long time. What if they decide to break off the engagement? Then let them do it. They can call it off now, why wait till tomorrow? After all, it's not the end of the world. Hashim was shocked and angry. Have you any idea what it means? The humiliation, what will people say? What humiliation? It'll be their decision, not our fault. Nothing's going to happen, believe me, tongues will wag for a few days, and then it'll all be forgotten. Baba, you are worrying unnecessarily, she said with nonchalance, trying to persuade her father. You must be out of your mind, talking such nonsense. Now please leave, Hashim Yubin said sharply, looking at her with disapproval. Mama left, feeling wretched, she could hardly sleep that night. The next day she went back to Lahore. Her father had not spoken to her again in this regard, and she tried to put the matter out of her mind. She had to study for the forthcoming exams. Her father had not dismissed this conversation, though. He was a very cautious person. He had become worried about Mama when the school incident involving Tareem had taken place. It was not so serious, but to play safe he had Mama's betrothal to Ashad confirmed. He believed that the development of a new relationship would divert Mama's thoughts from her doubts about her faith, and he was right. Mama began to show more interest in Ashad and also to participate in the religious activities of their faith. But what Wasim had revealed to him shook his very being. He could not gauge to what extent Mama had explored Islam, but he could see that there was a distinct change in her beliefs and views. This was a cause of concern not just for him, but for their entire family. He wanted her to be well educated like his older daughters, and more so because she would be married into a family that prided itself on its education. Ashad himself wanted Mama to be well qualified. Hashim Mubin could not cut short Mama's studies till the wedding, much as he wanted to, without having to explain the rationale behind such a decision. He'd rather they did not know. They would find it hard to accept Mama's doubts and queries about their faith, and her married life with Ashad would be unhappy. On one hand, he strictly forbade his family members from any discussion on this topic, and, on the other, he pleaded with Mama to let good sense prevail. Mama was so careful about her presence at Sabiha's lectures and her meetings with Jalal that these matters did not come to the notice of her family. Secrecy could be maintained also because Mama had also kept Javiria and Rabia in the dark, otherwise rumors would have floated around and reached Hashim Mubin's ears. He was satisfied on that score, but the subtle change in Mama's attitude bothered him, and the only solution that he could come up with was to marry her off. He thought it would relieve him of her responsibility, so he took this abrupt decision. Jalal, my parents have decided on my wedding to Ashad, she revealed. He was the first person she met when she got back to Lahore. But they were going to let you finish your house job. That's what they'd said, but now they say I can complete my studies after marriage. Ashad will find a place to live in Lahore so that I can study. Jalal could fathom her distress by looking at her. There's no way that I can marry Ashad. Then come clean with them, Mama, tell them you want to marry me, not Ashad, he said decisively. You have no idea how they'll react. I'll have to tell them everything. She thought for a moment and said, Jalal, ask your parents to talk to mine. Tell them about me. If my parents pressurize me, I'll have to leave home and I'll need your help. Jalal agreed. He reassured her that they would understand and accept his decision. For the first time, a faint smile arose on her face. She was busy with the examinations for the next few weeks and did not have the chance to meet Jalal. The day the examinations ended, Wasim turned up in Lahore to take her home. He had caught her by surprise. Wasim, I can't go home today. My papers have just finished and I have some work to wind up, she said. I'm here till tomorrow. I'm staying with a friend, so you can do whatever you have to and then come along, he replied, closing her last option. Mama agreed half-heartedly. You'd better pack up all your stuff, he called as he was leaving. You'll be spending all the holidays at home. She nodded, but she had no intention of packing all her belongings or of spending the entire vacations in Islamabad. She planned to return to Lahore after a few days, but she was mistaken. She was with her family around the dinner table when her father asked, How did your papers go? Very well, as usual, she replied, helping herself to some rice. Good. At least there's no more tension about exams. Now you can start your shopping tomorrow, he said. Mama was startled. What shopping? First go to the jeweler's and then for furniture. The rest of the preparations can follow at your pace. Instead of replying to Mama's question, Hashim Mubin addressed his wife. But why, Baba? Mama asked again. Didn't your mother tell you that we have fixed the wedding date? The spoon in her hand fell onto her plate and the color drained from her face. My wedding? She looked at her parents uncertainly. They could not grasp the situation. How can you do this, without asking me? She stared wildly. We spoke to you about this the last time you were here. Hashim Mubin's tone was somber. I had refused. I do not care about your refusal. I have already discussed this with Ashad's family, he angrily rebuked her. There was silence at the table as they ceased to eat. Mama stood up suddenly. I'm sorry, Baba, I can't marry Ashad now. You fixed the wedding date, so you'll have to tell them to postpone it. Or else. I'll talk to them myself. Hashim Yubin was about to explode with fury. You'll marry Ashad, and on the day I have decided, he shouted. It's not fair, and Mama was almost in tears. So now you're going to tell me what's fair and what's not, is that so? He was furious. Why are you forcing me when I'd told you I don't want to get married now? And Mama was crying. Because I have the right to do so, he screamed at her. She did not reply. Clenching his teeth and blazing with anger, he walked out of the room. Please sit down and have your dinner. Salma Mubin went after Hashim. I'll talk to her. Don't get so worked up, she's just being emotional. As soon as her mother left the room, and Mama turned on Wasim. Get out. Get away from here, she screamed, shoving him away. Why? What have I done? He moved back. You lied and brought me here by deceit. If I'd known about this in Lahore, I'd never have come back with you to Islamabad. I did what Baba told me to. He forbade me to tell you why you were coming home. I was just following his orders. Wasim tried to clear himself. Then go and sit with him. What business do you have here? And Mama could hardly contain her temper. Wasim left without saying a word. After coming into her room and Mama sat down on her bed, the earth had shifted beneath her feet. She had never imagined her family could do this to her, be so rigidly conservative in their views. She still could not believe this was happening to her. Her heart began to sink. I have to face this situation, I cannot give up. I must contact Jalal somehow, as soon as possible. He must have spoken to his parents. I'll find some way out by talking it over with him, she thought as she restlessly paced her room. After midnight, she came out to call Jalal. She knew her parents and siblings would have retired for the night. She dialed Jalal's number. The phone kept ringing without response. She tried several times for the next half hour, but to no avail. She couldn't call Javiria or Rabia as they were in the hostel. Then, Imama tried Sabiha's number. Her father answered and told her that Sabiha had gone to Peshawar with her mother for a family wedding. He said he'd be leaving the next day. Peshawar? Imama became tense. If there's a message for Sabiha, I can tell her, he offered. No, thank you, uncle, she said softly. What could she possibly tell him? She hung up. Her heart plunged into despair at the thought of not being able to contact Jalal. She dialed his number again, but someone took the receiver away from her. It was her father. Who are you calling? His tone was very composed. A friend, she replied, without looking at him. She could not look him in the eye and lie. I'll dial the number for you, he said, and pressing the redial key, held the receiver to his ear. Imama paled as she watched him. He put the receiver back after a while. Obviously, there was no response. Who's this friend that you were calling at this hour? He asked sternly. Zainab, she said, as it was Zainab's number on the CLI window. She did not want her father to have any doubts about Zainab that would lead him to Jalal. What for? I had to give her a message for Javiria, she said with some hesitation. Tell me what it is, I'll deliver the message personally. Imama, tell me honestly, are you interested in someone else? He asked without any fuss. She looked at him for a while, then said, yes. Hashim Yubin was stunned. He repeated his words and Imama nodded in acceptance. Impulsively, he slapped her across her face. That's just what I feared. Imama, lost in thought, her hand still on her cheek, looked at him. It was the first time in her life that he had hit her, his favorite child. She could not believe it. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. You will not be allowed to marry anyone else except Ashad. Even if you are interested in someone else, you have to forget him, now. Never, never, never will I let you get married anywhere else. Now get back to your room, and if I see you near the telephone again, I'll break your legs. He was trembling with rage. She returned to her room without a word and flinging herself on her bed, burst into tears. She could not get over her father's violent reaction. After crying a long time, she got up and, mindlessly, began to look out of the sealed glass window panes. Beneath was the garden of her own home and its lawns. Her glance fell across the wall at Sala's house. His room was on the ground floor. She could see some movement there and gauged that it must be Sala. It hit her like a flash. He could help her. If she confided in him and got him to contact Jalal, her problem could be solved. But how was she to get in touch with him? She concentrated and recalled his mobile number painted across the rear screen of his car. She repeated it and scribbled it on a piece of paper for reference. Then at 3 a.m, she tiptoed down to the lounge and called Sala. Sala was asleep when his cell phone began to beep. As the tone continued, he woke up and groped around his bedside table with considerable annoyance. "Hello," he said drowsily. Imama recognized his voice. "Hello," he said again. "Sala, it's me, Imama," she said. He was about to say Imama who, but he sat up with a jolt. Along with the name, he recognized the voice too. "I'm Wasim's sister." "I know." He switched on the lamp and reached for his watch. It was 3:10. There was silence at the other end of the line. "Hello," he said again. "Sala, I need your help," he frowned, trying to understand. "I saved your life once, and I want you to save my life now." He listened to her. "I need to contact someone in Lahore, but I can't." "Why?" "Because no one's picking up the phone." "At this time, you want..." She interrupted, "Please just hear me out. I can't call during the day, and perhaps not even tomorrow night. I'm not allowed to. I want you to note this number and address and to contact Jalal Ansar. Ask him if he has spoken to his parents, and if so, what their response is, and tell him that my parents have fixed my wedding date and will not let me leave Lahore until I get married." This was interesting. Sala sat up in bed, pulling his blanket over his knees, and listened to Imama dictating the telephone number and address. He did not write it down. He didn't need to. "And what if I get no response either?" he asked. "Then please go to Lahore and meet him," she was pleading now. "This is very important for me. If he should ask me how I come into the picture, tell him whatever you want, that doesn't interest me. I just want out of this mess." "Wouldn't it be better for you to talk to him?" Sala said. "I've told you that he's not answering the call now, and I may not get another chance to call him," she replied. Sala was silent and she hung up, feeling hopeless. Sala switched off his phone and tried to piece the jigsaw together. Imama Hashim, Jalal Ansar, contact, talk to parents, forced marriage. He hadn't asked Imama, but was trying to figure out her relationship with Jalal. It was interesting that a girl like Imama should be involved in such an affair, and that despite her aversion for Sala, she should be seeking his help. What's this female trying to do? Use me or frame me, he wondered. He lay back and tried to sleep, but could not. He had known Wasim and his family for some years now and had also seen Imama fleetingly, but had never really looked at her. He really didn't know much about her. Compared to his own family, Wasim's family was quite old-fashioned, so he could not visit them as freely as he went to other friends' homes. It did not bother him as he felt that people have their own traditions, but he had some idea of Imama's moods and temperament. However, Imama's call had shocked him and he tossed about restlessly. To hell with Imama and the rest, he muttered as he pulled his pillow over his head in an effort to get back to sleep. Imama returned to her room and sat down. She could feel knots in her stomach. Her life had been overturned in a few hours. She hadn't slept all night. She did not come out for breakfast. Her appetite had vanished. Around 10:30, she heard cars start and drive out of the porch. Her father and older brother must have left for their office. She was waiting for them to leave. She emerged from her room half an hour after Hashim Mubin's departure. Her mother and sister-in-law were in the lounge. Imama reached for the phone, but her mother called out. "Your father has said that you are not to use the phone." "I'm calling Ashad." Imama looked at her mother, who asked her why. "I want to talk to him." "And tell him the same rubbish you were talking last night?" her mother retorted. "I am speaking to him in your presence. Let me speak. If I say anything improper, you can cut off the call." Imama's voice was steady and calm. Her composure seemed to reassure her mother. Mama dialed, but it was not Ashad's number. The person who received the call was Jalal. A current of joy raced through Mama. "Hello, this is Mama," she said confidently, without naming Ashad. "Why did you leave for Islamabad without telling me?" "I went to the hostel to meet you," said Jalal. "I came to Islamabad yesterday, Ashad," she continued. "Ashad? Who are you talking to?" Jalal was surprised. "Baba told me last night that the wedding date has been fixed." It was as if a bolt of lightning had hit Jalal. "Wedding date?" he muttered, but she continued to speak calmly. "I want to know if you've spoken to your parents. I do not want to marry anyone other than you, so talk to them and let me know." I could not. It suddenly dawned on Jalal that someone was around Mama. That was the reason for her calling him Ashad. "I'll talk to them." "When will you call me?" "You tell me when." "Call tomorrow." "What date has been set for the wedding?" There was concern in his voice. She was not aware of the schedule, but he reassured her that he would sort out the matter with his parents. Mama thanked him and said goodbye. She was relieved that neither her mother nor her sister-in-law had suspected that she was speaking to someone other than Ashad. "This wedding has been arranged by your father and Azam Bai, and they're not going to postpone it for you or Ashad," her mother said in a more relaxed tone. "Ammi, I'm just going down to the market, I have to get some things for myself," Mama said instead of responding to her mother. "It's one thing to allow you to use the telephone, but you are not to go out of the house. Your father has warned me and the chowkidar too not to let you out." "Ammi, why are you people treating me this way? I haven't refused marriage, I'm only asking to be allowed to complete my house job." Mama sat down helplessly. "I fail to understand why you are delaying the wedding. The date has been brought forward, but this match isn't against your will." Mama's sister-in-law tried to reason with her. "The whole house has been plunged into tension since last night just because of you. You surprise me, Mama, you were never so stubborn. What's come over you? Something has happened ever since you've been to Lahore. And our wishes will make no difference, let me tell you." "Your father has made up his mind," her mother added. "But at least you could have tried to reason with him," protested Mama. "Why? I'd have spoken up if there was something to object to, but that was not the case," her mother replied. Fuming, Mama returned to her room. Uncharacteristically for him, Salah woke up late. When he saw the time, he decided not to go to college. His parents were away in Karachi, and he was alone at home. He was watching TV when the servant brought in his breakfast. He remembered something and asked for the maidservant, Nasira, who came in shortly. "I need you to do something for me," he told the middle-aged woman. "Your daughter works in Wasim's house, right? What time does she go there?" Salah put down the remote control and turned his attention to her. "Yes, she does, she is there now." She looked at him, a little taken aback. "Why? What happened, Salah Sahib?" "Nothing. I just want you to go there and give this mobile to her. Tell her to give the phone to Mama." Salah casually held out the cell phone. Nasira was confused. "I did not understand you, sir." "Give this phone to your daughter and tell her to give it to Mama without letting anyone know," he repeated firmly. "But why? And what if someone gets to know?" "You don't need to know why," he said sharply, "and people will find out only if you or your daughter opens your big mouths. And we'll be in big trouble if you do so, but if you don't then it will remain a secret and you will benefit too." Without a word, Nasira picked up the phone. Salah warned her again. As she was about to leave, he stopped her. Taking some money from his wallet, he gave it to her, and she took it with a slight smile. This was a familiar situation in the homes of the rich people she worked for. She knew of the secrets their children had, and keeping them hidden was a nice way of making extra money. She concluded that Salah and Mama had something going, and the cell phone was a gift. She was surprised at herself. How come she hadn't discovered this? And then Mama, wasn't she getting married? Then why was she up to this mischief? And to think That I always thought she was such a good girl. Nasira was appalled at her ignorance of this development. About 6 months ago, Yumra Ahmed official. Abu, I want to talk to you about something. That night Jalal went to his father's room. Yes, come in. What is it? He looked up from the files he was studying. Jalal pulled up a chair and sat down, but he did not speak up. Ansar Javed, looking at his son's worried expression, realized that something was amiss. I want to get married. Jalal came to the point without any fuss. You want to what? This was hardly what he expected to hear from his son. Jalal repeated his statement. How come you took this sudden decision? Till yesterday you wanted to go abroad for specialization, he smiled. Well, the situation is such that I had no choice but to talk it over with you. His father became serious. Jalal continued with some hesitation after a pause. Have you seen Zainab's friend Imama? Yes. Are you interested in her? His father asked, and Jalal nodded in agreement. But they are very wealthy people. Besides, they are not Muslims. Ansar Javed's tone had changed. Abu, they are Qadianis, but she has converted to Islam, Jalal explained. Do her parents know? His father asked, and when Jalal's answer was negative, he sharply rebuked him. Do you think they will accept this proposal? Her parents' permission is not needed, we want to go ahead without it. Ansar Javed was livid. Have you lost your mind? I cannot allow this under any circumstances. Jalal was crushed, but he persisted. I have a commitment. Did you do so with my permission? At this age, people have many commitments, many interests, but that does not mean that you should ruin your life. I know how well connected that family is, they'll ruin us if they get to know. Jalal pleaded with his father, but Ansar Javed was adamant that he would not entertain any wedding plans for his son until he had completed his specialization. When Jalal made it clear that Imama was his sole choice, he advised that she should speak to her parents in this regard. If they agreed, then Ansar Javed would give his blessings too. Abu, please try to understand her problem. She's a very nice girl and she wants to marry a Muslim, but her parents will not accept her decision. She needs our help. Jalal deliberately did not mention her engagement to Ashad. I am not interested in others' problems, and nor should you be. You should be thinking about your future. Many people have problems and need help. Can you help them all? Besides, there's a huge difference in their status and ours. I'm not going to earn their enmity, nor am I going to lose face among my own people by bringing a non-Muslim into our family. I told you she has converted. There was annoyance in Jalal's tone. This was even before we met. Were you a witness? His father was not convinced. Even if this is true, then she should sort out her problems. Why does she want to involve you? Only if she takes her parents into confidence and they agree. Will your mother and I consider your marrying Imama? We're not going to have a runaway daughter-in-law. No amount of persuasion or argument in favor of religious sentiment could move Jalal's father. Don't drag religion into this. You're not the only Muslim who must find a solution. Be realistic. It's all very well to be aware of your moral responsibility, but you also owe it to your parents to respect their wishes. It is incumbent on you to obey us. Supposing you do marry her, what next? You'll go off abroad in 6 months or so and she'll have to stay home. I cannot afford to educate your siblings, pay for your studies abroad and for her education as well, he continued. How long will she sit home? Besides, what if her family sues us? We can be convicted and even be jailed. What becomes of your sister then? Jalal had no answers to his father. Think coolly, rationally, instead of being so emotional, his father reiterated. If her parents do not approve of you, then tell her to marry someone else. You'll come to know how damaging your decision in her favor could be. Baji, shall I do your room? The maid, knocking at the door, asked Imama. No. Go away, Imama waved her off. The maid, instead of leaving, shut the door behind her and stood before Imama. Did I not tell you to? Imama started, but choked on her words. The maid produced a cell phone from her chatter. And Mama was taken by surprise. Baji, my mother has given me this. She said that your neighbor, Salasab, has sent this for you. She quickly held out the phone to Mama, who snatched it. Her heart raced. Listen, you're not to tell anyone that you've brought me a phone or anything, Mama cautioned her. No, Baji, don't worry, I won't tell anyone. In fact, if you want to send something for Salasab, you can give it to me. No, I have nothing to send. You can leave, she said, regaining her composure. Mama hastily locked the room as the maid left. With great trepidation, she took out the phone from the drawer and began dialing Jalal's number. As she wanted to talk to him in detail. Jalal's mother picked up the phone. Beta, I'm afraid Jalal's not home and he'll be back at night. You could speak to Zainab. Shall I call her? No, thank you, Auntie. I'm in a bit of a rush, actually. I'll speak to Zainab later. I'd asked Jalal for some books and I wanted to find out about them. I'll call again, Mama said as she hung up. Mama did not eat that afternoon either. She was waiting for the night when Jalal would be back home and she could speak to him. In the evening, the maid informed her that there was a call from Ashad. When she went down to the lounge, only Wasim was sitting there. She totally ignored him and moved to the phone. As she picked up the phone, she heard Ashad's voice at the other end. It made her blood boil, even though she knew that her father, rather than Ashad, was instrumental in arranging this match. Ashad was inquiring after her welfare. She was furious. Ashad, why have you deceived me? What deceit, Imama? Fixing the wedding date, why didn't you speak to me, she asked, fuming. Didn't Uncle talk to you about it? He did, and I'd told him that I did not want to marry just now. Whatever, now it is too late, and what difference does it make if you get married now or some years later, Ashad responded with some indifference. Ashad. Whether it affects you or not, it certainly makes a difference to me. I don't want to get married till I've completed my studies, and you know this very well too. Yes, I know, but in this whole affair I'm nowhere involved. Let me tell you that this whole marriage is being arranged at Uncle's insistence. You have it stopped. What are you saying, Imama? How can I have it stopped? Ashad exclaimed. Ashad, please. Imama, I can't do it. Try to understand my position. Moreover, the wedding cards have been printed, both the families are preparing for the wedding and… Imama abruptly banged down the receiver. Wasim had not interfered in the whole conversation. He had quietly listened, but when Imama broke off, Wasim said, You are quite unnecessarily making a terrible issue of the whole thing. Eventually, you'll have to marry Ashad, then why are you creating problems for yourself? As it is, Baba is very upset with you. I did not ask for your opinion, so mind your own business. You've hurt me enough, Imama stormed back to her room. What happens next? Wait for the next part. Thank you.